Hello mythology lovers, welcome back to the world of mythology. Today's video is about how Apollo got his lyre. Mercury was the child of Maya, the eldest of Pleiades, and lived with his mother in a cave among the mountains. One day, when he was only just big enough to walk, he ran out of the doors to play in the sunshine and saw a spotted tortoise shell lying in the grass. He laughed with pleasure at the sight of the pretty thing and quickly carried it into the cave. Then he bored holes in the edges of the shell, fastened hollow reeds inside, and with a piece of leather and strings made a lyre of it. This was the first lyre that was ever made, and the most wonderful music lay hidden in it. That night, when his mother was asleep, Mercury crept slyly out of his cradle and went out into the moonlight. He ran into the pastures where Apollo's white cattle were sleeping, and slowly stole 50 of the finest heifers. Then he threw his baby shoes into the ocean and bound great limbs of tamarisk to his feet, so that no one would be able to tell who had been walking in the soft sand. After this, he drove the cattle hither and thither in great glee for a while, then took them down the mountain and shut them into a cave. But one would think from the tracks left in the sand the cattle had been driven up instead of down the mountain. A peasant who was hoeing his vineyard by the light of the full moon saw this wonderful baby pass by, driving the cattle, and could hardly believe his own eyes. No one else saw Mercury, and just at sunrise the little mischief went home to his mother's cave, slipped in through the keyhole, and in a twinkling was in his cradle with his tortoise shell lyre held tightly in his arms, looking as if he had been sleeping there all night. Apollo soon missed his cattle. It happened that the man who had been hoeing his grapevines by the moonlight was still working in the same field. When Apollo asked him whether he had seen anyone driving the cattle over that road, the man described the baby that he had seen, with the curious shoes, and told him how it had driven the cattle backward and forward and up and down. By daylight, the road looked as if the wind had been playing havoc with the young evergreens. Their twigs were scattered here and there, and the great branches seemed to have been broken off and blown about in the sand. There were no tracks of any living thing except the tracks of the cattle, which led in all directions. This was very confusing. But Apollo, knowing that no baby except his own baby brother could drive cattle, went straight to Maya's cave. There lay Mercury in his cradle, fast asleep. When Apollo accused him of stealing his white cattle, he sat up, rubbed his eyes, and said innocently that he did not know what cattle were. He had just heard of the word for the first time. But Apollo was angry and insisted that the baby should go with him to Jupiter to have the dispute settled. When the two brothers came before Jupiter's throne, Mercury kept on saying that he had never seen any cattle and did not know what they were. But as he said so, he gave Jupiter such a roguish wink that he made the god laugh heartily. Then he suddenly got up to his lyre and began to play. The music was so beautiful that all gods in Olympus held their breath to listen. Even Jupiter's fierce eagle nodded his head to the measures. When Mercury stopped playing, Apollo declared that such music was worth 50 cattle, and agreed to say no more about the theft. This so pleased Mercury that he gave Apollo the lyre. Then Apollo, in return for the gift of wonderful lyre, gave Mercury a golden wand called Caduceus, which had the power over sleep and dreams and wealth and happiness. At a later time, 2 wings fluttered from the top of this wand, and 2 golden snakes were twined round it. Besides presenting Mercury, Apollo made him herdsman of the wonderful white cattle. Mercury now drove 50 heifers back to the pastures, so the quarrel was made up, and the 2 brothers, Apollo and Mercury, became the best of friends. On a day when the wind is blowing and driving fleecy white clouds before it, perhaps if you look up, you will see white cattle of Apollo. But you will have to look very sharp to see the herdsman Mercury. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. Hit the bell icon to receive notifications about our future videos.